Have you ever felt that the world is designed to devour the naive? While you act with honesty, others manipulate with a smile. While you trust, they calculate. And when you wonder why you always end up hurt or ignored, the answer is simple: you don't understand the game, and they do. It isn't luck. It isn't fate. It's strategy. The world doesn't belong to the good. It belongs to the cunning. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. Most people live asleep, believing that power lies in strength or kindness. But true dominance is born in the silent mind, in the cunning that stays hidden, in the intelligence that watches while everyone else speaks. Being cunning is not being evil, it is seeing what others refuse to see, foreseeing what others ignore, and moving without leaving footprints. In a world of wolves, the intelligent lamb doesn't become a victim. It becomes a shadow. In this video, you will discover the keys to developing the mind Machiavelli wanted you to fear: cold, strategic, and emotionally armored. A mind that does not break, does not react, and commands without speaking. A mind that can look the enemy in the eyes and smile, knowing it has already won. Subscribe if you are ready to think clearly in a world that rewards deception. Comment power if you want to awaken the mind that no one will ever manipulate again. And share this video so others can open their eyes too, before the system uses them as pawns in a game they don't even realize they are playing. First key: learn to think like a silent predator. Machiavelli knew that most men think like prey. They speak too much, feel too much, trust too much. They are loud in their innocence, believing transparency makes them noble, when in truth it makes them vulnerable. Power, he said, does not belong to the strongest or the most righteous, but to the one who sees first, keeps silent best, and acts without being detected. Thinking like a predator does not mean being cruel, it means learning how to move with calculation inside human chaos. It means studying people with the same precision a hawk uses when measuring distance before striking its prey. The predator does not attack because it hates. It attacks because it understands. It observes before moving, analyzes before speaking, calculates before deciding. Machiavelli saw this in the princes of his time. The foolish rushed in driven by impulse, while the wise waited until the enemy exposed himself. The secret was not to react to provocation, but to turn another's emotion into information. Every gesture, every word, every glance became a crack that revealed weakness. And whoever learned to read those cracks had already won. Psychologically, this mindset is rooted in strategic emotional coldness. It is not about feeling nothing, but about refusing to let emotion decide for you. The weak excuse themselves with lines like "that's just how I am" or "I can't help it," but the cunning understand that every emotional outburst is a door the enemy can open. Controlling your response is not hypocrisy, it is power. Because the person who masters impulse becomes unpredictable. And the unpredictable is what the world fears most. Machiavelli observed that the most dangerous men did not shout or threaten. They spoke little. They listened even when they already knew the answer. Their power was born from mystery, from the discomfort provoked by their calm. Nothing destabilizes a manipulator more than someone who does not react. That apparent neutrality is a trap. While the other unravels trying to decipher you, you are studying him. Silence becomes a scalpel, and observation becomes a weapon. To think like a silent predator is to understand one essential Machiavellian principle: a cold mind is not a weakness, it is a precision tool. While everyone else acts on impulse, you act by design. While others justify themselves, you advance. While the masses seek emotional validation, you seek control. And while they try to please, you study. Power belongs to the one who sees the pattern, not to the one dragged around by emotion. In practice, this means learning to hide your intentions behind a mask of calm. Not because you are false, but because excess transparency kills strategy. The modern world does not reward naked truth, it rewards veiled intelligence. Machiavelli would have said the most dangerous predator is not the one who roars, but the one who smiles. And within that smile, chaos becomes hypnotized. In the end, there are only two kinds of men: those who react, and those who calculate. The first live by what they feel, the second rule over what they feel. And while the world keeps chasing emotional justice, the cunning train in silence, waiting for the precise moment to move. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. In the game of power, it is not the pure who survive. It is the ones who see before everyone else. Second key: the art of invisibility, mastery without being seen. Machiavelli understood that the most dangerous power is not the one that shows itself, but the one that hides in plain sight. Most men believe domination means shouting, imposing, being feared, yet true control is born from subtlety. The cunning do not need to display strength, They only need to shape the environment so others act in their favor without realizing it. Invisibility is a form of psychological dominion. You become a ghost pulling the strings of the world while the world continues to believe it decides for itself. Machiavelli observed this in royal courts, where discreet advisors wielded more influence than kings, and where true authority did not sit on the throne, but whispered behind it. The common man seeks recognition, the strategist seeks results. While one wants to be seen and admired, the other blends into the shadows of the system. He knows that every round of applause steals a portion of his power, and every moment of exposure turns him into a target. That is why the wise choose invisibility, not from fear, but from intelligence. The man who hides does not disappear, he multiplies. He learns to use social masks as tools, to appear harmless while observing, to remain unnoticed until the moment to act arrives. The cunning understand that ego is the true weakness of the powerful. While everyone competes for visibility, the strategist rules from anonymity. Machiavelli might have said, "The visible man belongs to the judgment of others, the invisible man belongs to himself." Within the psychology of power, exposure is the sweetest poison. It seduces, but it destroys. Modern society has turned visibility into an addiction. Everyone wants to be seen, everyone wants to speak, everyone wants to prove they exist. And inside that noise, the cunning find their refuge. They move in silence while the rest shout. They observe behavioral patterns, swollen egos, and gestures of weakness. Every spoken word becomes data, every emotional outburst a map. While others perform, the strategist plans. The power of invisibility also has an emotional dimension, detachment. To be invisible, one must relinquish the need to be understood, to accept that one's greatness may go unnoticed by the world. And that, in truth, is an advantage. Because a man who no longer needs validation can no longer be manipulated. When you become independent of approval, you become unpredictable. And no one can control a person who no longer fears disappearing. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Those who spoke the most were always the first to fall, because their hunger to be heard betrayed them. The modern strategist must learn to cultivate this inner anonymity. It is not about hiding from the world, but about refusing to surrender the mind to the world's noise. To act without announcing, to advance without explaining, to observe without intervening until the terrain is ready. Invisibility grants power because it removes predictability. No one can anticipate your moves if they do not even know you are in the game. And when you finally reveal yourself, the impact is devastating. While others struggle to understand what is happening, you are already 10 steps ahead. Machiavelli would have admired this form of power, for what cannot be seen cannot be attacked. The invisible man inspires no envy, awakens no competition, attracts no unnecessary enemies. He simply exists, adapts, influences, and transforms. In a world where everyone wants to be the loudest voice, the whisper of the invisible man ultimately becomes the one that decides everyone's fate. At its highest level, invisibility is not absence, it is silent control. It is being everywhere without being noticed, influencing without carrying the burden of visible power. It is watching others exhaust themselves chasing recognition while you grow stronger in mystery. Because, as Machiavelli would have written with cold clarity, visible power inspires fear, but invisible power shapes destiny. Third key, the manipulation of chaos. Turn confusion into your ally. Machiavelli knew that the common man fears chaos, but the strategist provokes it. Where the weak see disorder, the cunning see opportunity. For chaos reveals what order disguises, the true character of men. In times of stability, everyone appears wise, prudent, and just. But it only takes a spark of uncertainty for the masks to crack. Anxiety, fear, rivalry, all surface when balance collapses. And that is where the Machiavellian enters, not as a victim of chaos, but as its architect. He who understands this law does not flee from conflict, he observes it, lets it grow, and uses it to steer the course of events without ever raising his voice. Machiavelli saw this clearly in the halls of power. The prince who kept his court calm was loved, but weak. The one who maintained constant tension was feared, and therefore obeyed. Because chaos, when managed, keeps men busy defending themselves instead of plotting. This is the psychology of confusion. While everyone reacts to the fireworks you yourself ignited, no one notices the hand holding the torch. To control chaos is not to sow destruction, it is to create distraction. It is to direct the flow of collective attention wherever you choose, while your true intentions remain invisible. In modern life, this technique is still alive. In work environments, social circles, and even emotional realms, the one who masters chaos dictates the rhythm. When others shout, you stay silent. When everyone reacts, You wait. Because chaos does not destroy the wise, it reveals them. While others drown in confusion, you become the only stable point. That calm in the storm generates a magnetic power. Human beings instinctively seek refuge. And whoever remains composed in chaos automatically becomes the leader, even without a title. Machiavelli might have said, "In times of disorder, the cold mind reigns." Psychologically, manipulating chaos means understanding the emotional cycles of others. When people feel afraid, they lose autonomy. They search for figures who can restore a sense of control. And that is where the cunning step in, not as saviors, but as architects of calm. They do not impose order through force, but through presence. They become the only ones who seem to understand what is happening, and so everyone begins to follow them. This is the essence of Machiavellian power, making others depend on your serenity while you silently feed the fire that keeps them vulnerable. Machiavelli understood that chaos cannot be destroyed, it must be administered. Total stability dulls the mind, but intermittent confusion preserves respect. For this reason, great strategists never seek absolute peace, because prolonged peace produces forgetfulness. A relaxed man stops fearing. A trusting ally stops obeying. Controlled chaos, by contrast, keeps alertness alive. It is the perfect tension between fear and need. The cunning mind learns to dose uncertainty like a mild poison, enough to dominate, never enough to destroy. True power is not extinguishing chaos, but mastering the art of directing it without staining your hands. Letting others argue while you decide. Allowing them to waste energy in petty battles while you draw the master plan. Letting them exhaust themselves seeking culprits while you advance without resistance. In this arena, chaos is no longer an enemy, it becomes camouflage, curtain, shield. It is the noise that protects your silence. Machiavelli would have concluded that only the wise grasp this paradox: the world is not ruled through calm, but through the intelligent administration of disorder. For amid generalized confusion, the one who maintains a cold mind becomes a law of nature. And when you reach that point, when chaos obeys you, you no longer need power. Because you have become the invisible center of order. Fourth key, the invisible war: destroy without staining your hands. Machiavelli understood that the powerful do not conquer in public. They conquer in silence. Visible war exhausts, exposes, leaves traces behind. But invisible war, the war fought in the mind and in perception, grants absolute dominion. The cunning do not need to confront, they need the enemy to destroy himself while believing he acts on his own will. That is the highest art of power, pulling the strings without being seen moving them. Machiavelli observed how intelligent princes never shed blood directly. They planted doubt, rumor, intrigue. They did not kill with swords, but with suspicion. And the outcome was always the same: the enemy ended up executing himself. The strategist does not react to attack, he absorbs it, studies it, and turns it into leverage. He does not seek vengeance, he seeks psychological corrosion. For hatred wears down, but doubt annihilates. The moment you make the enemy question his own certainty, the battle is already over. Machiavelli watched this tactic repeat itself in the cruelest courts. Wise kings did not say, "Eliminate him," they said something far worse: "Make him believe he is free." And in that false freedom, the enemy ended up disobeying himself. That is mental dominion, the power to make others collapse while believing they are rising. In modern life, this form of war wears another mask: self-control. Those who try to hurt you crave a reaction, they need it to validate their power over you. Every word spoken in self-defense feeds their narrative. But strategic silence does not make you weak, it makes you a mirror. Silence reflects the aggressor's insecurity back onto himself until he disarms himself. Machiavelli knew this: in politics or in love, the one who explains the most always loses. Because whoever justifies himself is already asking forgiveness for existing. The wise, instead, allow noise to grow tired of itself. Psychologically, this invisible war is won through understanding the ego of others. Every human being needs to feel important, admired, superior. If you understand how to nourish those illusions without binding yourself to them, you control the stage. Machiavelli wrote it plainly: he who rules appearances rules hearts. Let the enemy believe he underestimates you, and he will trap himself inside his own pride. The most dangerous predator is not the one who attacks, but the one who watches while the other digs his own grave, smiling. Machiavellian power is not measured by visible victories, but by how many enemies you destroy without ever needing to touch them, not through violence, but through emotional precision. A withheld word, a glance not returned, a calculated gesture, everything communicates. The wise do not act impulsively, they act surgically. They understand that the most enduring damage is the damage with no visible culprit. The man tangled in revenge wastes energy, reputation, and time. The one who acts with distance lets time itself accomplish what he does not need to stain his hands to achieve. Machiavelli would have said that absolute power does not announce itself, it is felt. The true victor never appears in the chronicles, yet he stands behind every fall, every rumor, every decision that shifts a kingdom. And so it is today. The wisest do not need to argue, impose, or raise their voice. They move a single piece in silence, and the entire board changes. Because the world does not belong to those who shout victory, it belongs to those who had already won before the battle ever began. Fifth key, turn other people's emotions into your battlefield. Emotion is the fuel that moves men, and Machiavelli knew fire well. It can illuminate, or it can burn. Yet there is a way of understanding fire that few ever master, not by extinguishing it, nor by letting it consume you, but by igniting it exactly where it serves you most. The cunning do not fight with cold arguments, they seize the other's affection, nostalgia, rage, and hope, and convert them into instruments. They do not manipulate feelings out of sadism, but out of strategic precision. A heart moved by you becomes an invisible hand that orders others to act on your behalf. Whoever controls the emotional compass of a crowd or an individual dictates their routes without ever needing to issue a command. Machiavelli observed that passions rule more powerfully than laws. Even in his era he understood that proclamations and treaties were worth less than popular fervor. Today the truth is brutally amplified, with a single well-placed word, a calculated pause, a staged wound, destinies can be redirected. The political seducer persuades not because he is more rational, but because he makes people feel their survival depends on believing in him. The emotional seducer creates a need, not for truth, but for belonging, revenge, redemption, or admiration. And when such a need exists, judgment fades and will becomes malleable. This technique demands extreme subtlety. It is not about shouting, but whispering what already lives beneath the other person's skin, not inventing emotions, but reflecting them back magnified. The process begins by identifying the wound, the insecurity that silences public speech, the humiliation that still bleeds quietly, the ambition disguised as humility. Then you feed that wound just enough, a look that recognizes it, a phrase that validates it, a silence that places it at the center. Gradually, the world's victim begins to believe you are their refuge. And while they express gratitude, they surrender territories of judgment and freedom. Machiavelli would have stated it without mercy, there is no more loyal soldier than the one who believes he has found his cure in you. Psychologically, to seize affection is to dominate the other person's map of values. When someone needs you to calm their fear, they begin to see your interests as their salvation. Emotional dependency forges an invisible bond that excuses everything, mistakes, manipulation, omissions. The emotional predator is not the one who strikes, but the one who convinces the victim to hold the shovel with which they dig their own grave, believing they are building a home. Learning this is not immoral in itself, it is learning the anatomy of human behavior. Ethical responsibility is your choice, effectiveness belongs to the one who understands the psychology of desire. But beware, this weapon demands mastery over your own emotions. You cannot hijack hearts if your own beats without direction. The Machiavellian paradox is this: to move emotions successfully, you must remain emotionally detached on the surface and fully awake in your depths. That detachment is not useless coldness, it is discipline. It allows you to see the cracks in others without being dragged into them, to anchor emotions without becoming prey to the tides you provoke. True mastery is touching without leaving fingerprints. In modern practice, this translates into measured gestures, the call placed at the precise moment, the message that appears casual, the public humiliation carefully dosed so the victim seeks forgiveness without understanding why, the promise delivered only after all other options have already been abandoned. These tactics may appear cruel on the surface, but when applied with moderation they forge deep loyalties. Machiavelli would say, "He who manipulates affection does not rule with visible chains, but with borrowed heartbeats. And once that heartbeat synchronizes with your will, resistance becomes obsolete." The greatest perversion of emotional warfare lies in its invisibility. The victims rarely realize they were led at all. They believe in their choice, their freedom, their love, or their resentment. And that belief is the seal that transforms a tactic into lasting domination. The cunning who learns to hijack hearts without leaving evidence secures not only allies, but guardians, people who will defend his cause even when it harms them. Machiavelli would not have called this betrayal, he would have called it the natural result of understanding that once the human will is redirected, it surrenders with devotion. Sixth key, the architect of regret, make others return to your hands. Machiavelli would have smiled at the one who masters the art of provoking guilt in others without ever touching them. This is not about humiliating for revenge, nor hurting for pleasure. It is about engineering circumstances in which the other person believes they lost something valuable because of their own clumsiness. Regret is more powerful than obligation. The one who feels guilty for having hurt you will seek redemption, and in that search for redemption they offer not only apologies, but loyalty, favors, and emotional dependence. The architect of regret does not strike with force, he plants signals, leaves clues, creates small apparent betrayals that the other interprets as their fault. And when remorse is born, you are no longer the one chasing, you become the refuge to which they run. This technique requires subtlety. You do not manufacture a monumental offense, but a slow-growing sensation of loss. A calculated silence at a crucial moment, a discreet withdrawal of attention when the other crosses a line, an ambiguous phrase left hanging like an unfulfilled promise. You will gain nothing from scandal, you will gain everything from doubt. Machiavelli observed how great princes generated regret in former allies through minimal gestures, a look, a moment of distance, a delay in offering help. The victim, trying to repair what they believe they broke, unknowingly submits to a program of restitution that always benefits you. Psychologically, regret is a brain reaction that forces a person to rewrite their internal narrative. To avoid cognitive dissonance, that mental torment that arises when actions clash with one's moral self-image, human beings often repair their behavior by seeking absolution. The architect of regret exploits this impulse. He does not demand forgiveness, he suggests it. He creates a scenario in which apologizing feels like the only escape, and then transforms the apology into concession. What begins as remorse ends as a social debt. And social debts are paid with loyalty. This power is especially lethal because it remains almost invisible to the victim. No one says, "They made me feel guilty so they could control me." Instead, the story is told as a personal realization. I see now that I acted wrongly, I want to fix it. And within this self-accusation, the manipulator appears not as executioner but as savior. Machiavelli would have applauded the strategic purity of this dynamic, the ability to gain followers without moral compasses, devotees who believe they have chosen freely, not by design. This is how modern control works. No one realizes their regret was orchestrated, they only feel the relief of belonging again. The practice demands emotional discipline. You cannot provoke regret if your own conduct is erratic. You must be consistent in your distance, predictable in your withdrawal, firm in your boundaries. The victim needs time to recognize the loss and space to mourn it. Forgive too quickly and you destroy the process, surrender to revenge and you lose your elegance. Machiavelli would have said without delicacy. He who wishes another to return must know how to withdraw without burning the road. Keep the threshold of your absence exact, enough to cause pain, but not so much that the other finds another refuge. Used with twisted ethics or cold strategy, this tactic transforms former adversaries into guardians of your reputation. Regret turns guilt into an unwritten contract. I was wrong and must compensate. And compensation tends to arrive in the form of labor, favors, recommendations, obedience. The architect of regret does not seek slaves through force, he creates them through emotional obligation. Machiavelli would not have called this betrayal or mercy. He would have called it politics applied to the human soul, the science of directing wills without the use of visible chains. Seventh key, social usury. Machiavelli would have smiled at the one who discovers that money is not the only currency that buys obedience. There exists another far subtler and more enduring one, social debt. I am not speaking of grand favors, but of a calculated system in which every small concession is transformed into perpetual interest. Social usury requires no violence, only patience and strategy. You offer a minimal gesture at the perfect moment, discreet help, a quiet recommendation, a favor disguised as coincidence, and what you plan is not fleeting gratitude, but obligation. Handled correctly, that obligation yields dividends in loyalty, information, and power for years. The principle is simple and lethal. People remember more what you saved them from than what you ever took from them. The human mind undervalues small favors and overvalues moral debts. A paid coffee on a hard day, a door open when no one else would, a mention that rescues a reputation, these are micro-injections of dependency. Machiavelli would have recognized this as the political economy of the soul. Every favor is a tacit contract that appears nowhere on paper but is signed deep within the conscience. And when you accumulate these micro-debts into a web of relationships, you build a network of obligation that becomes nearly impossible to break. Psychologically, social usury exploits the rule of reciprocity, the almost biological need to repay what is received. But the cunning lies not in giving to extract immediate payment, it lies in giving in a way that conceals the transaction itself. Make the favor appear genuine, accidental, the natural result of connection. Then, when the time comes to ask for something, loyalty, silence, recommendation, the person feels the debt as their own and pays it without resentment. What once appeared as generosity transforms into internalized obligation. Machiavelli would apply this principle coldly: do not give, invest. Each favor must carry an unspoken emotional price and an implied time clause. Never give everything, dose it. Create anticipation, let people expect your support in small matters but not in all things. That predictability makes you necessary without making you omnipresent. Leave them waiting. Debt without urgency is the most effective form of debt because it does not provoke panic, it settles into normalcy. And when someone eventually needs your genuine intervention, they repay not only with gratitude, but with allegiance. In practice, master 4 exact tactics: public micro-favors, reputation-elevating favors, crisis favors, and symbolic favors. Public micro-favors, helping in front of witnesses, multiply the debt because they add social shame to reciprocity. Reputation-elevating favors convert your intervention into social capital. People assist you because remaining aligned with you benefits them, and binds them. Crisis favors are the most expensive. The one who saves you at your darkest moment is owed not merely gratitude, but social allegiance for life. And symbolic favors, a message, a discreet reference, are the cheapest coins that purchase the most precious asset, trust. Do not confuse social usury with crude manipulation. The key is subtlety and consistency. Give without discernment and you lose authority, demand payment after a hollow gesture and you lose legitimacy. Usury works only when the other person believes they act freely, when their devotion is born from emotional need rather than coercion. Machiavelli would have said, "Make them owe you without realizing it, make them belong to you without stripping them of the illusion of choice. That illusion of freedom is the armor that renders the debt indestructible." Machiavelli would not linger on moral objections. To practice social usury is to become an architect of destinies. You can construct enduring alliances or networks of silent subjugation. Power, in its coldest form, does not judge, it calculates consequences. If you choose to apply this key, do so with clarity of intent. Do you seek protection, dominance, redemption? Every motive leaves a fingerprint on the social fabric that will one day be remembered. And remember, the profit of social usury depends on your emotional discipline. Do not collect too quickly, and never surrender to overexposure. When social usury is well administered, no one perceives chains, only pleasant exchanges, discreet favors, mutual gratitude. Yet beneath that courteous surface accumulates an immense reserve of credit that you may call upon at will: loyalty, silence, protection, resources. Machiavelli would have applauded it. There is no need to seize the will when you can rent it one favor at a time. And when millions of favors consolidate into a network, you no longer compete for visible power, you possess it. Here are 2 more psychology videos that will grant you elite levels of psychological and Machiavellian power. Go watch them.